world of Seth, the Egyptian god of chaos and disorder, and see if I can uncover his secrets while tackling some chaotic challenges along the way. Seth has often been considered one of the more controversial figures in Egyptian mythology, but there's so much more to him than his role as a troublemaker. He's a god of complexity, duality, and balance. And by the end of this video, you'll see why. So, buckle up as we tackle Seth's wild and often misunderstood story. Now, Seth is known as the god of chaos, but let's explore what that really means. On the surface, his name is associated with disorder, but Seth wasn't just some random force of destruction. He had a significant role in maintaining the balance of the universe. Despite his chaotic nature, Seth was necessary for keeping the forces of creation and destruction in harmony. So, how does a god known for causing so much chaos also become vital to the world's balance? Let's find out. For the ancient Egyptians, balance was everything. Without it, the world would descend into chaos. But here's where things get interesting. Chaos wasn't always bad. Seth, as the god of chaos, was paradoxically also the protector of pharaohs, especially in the afterlife. While Seth might seem like a destructive force, he was also the one who kept the forces of the underworld in check. Isn't it fascinating that this god, who represents so much disruption, could also be seen as a protector? Seth's dual nature is what makes him so captivating. On the one hand, he was the god of the desert and foreign lands, places that were seen as hostile and dangerous. Because of this, he was sometimes seen as an outsider among the other Egyptian gods. His connection to the barren, desolate desert lands made him a figure of fear and awe. But on the other hand, Seth had his moments of heroism. For example, he defended the sun god Ra from the monstrous serpent Apophis during Ra's nightly journey through the underworld. Talk about a wild ride. But despite these positive moments, Seth is most famous, or should I say infamous, for his role in the myth of Osiris. According to Egyptian legend, Seth killed his brother Osiris, the god of the afterlife, cutting his body into pieces and scattering them across Egypt. But the story doesn't end there. Osiris' wife, Isis, gathered the pieces and, with the help of magic, brought him back to life just long enough to conceive their son, Horus. Now, here's where the epic battle comes in. Seth wasn't exactly thrilled about Horus, the son of Osiris, claiming the throne of Egypt. What followed was one of the most intense rivalries in all of mythology, Seth versus Horus. Their battles weren't just physical. They were symbolic of the struggle between chaos and order. While Horus represented light, justice, and kingship, Seth represented disorder and the unknown. This conflict wasn't just about two gods fighting. It was a representation of the eternal struggle that the Egyptians believed governed the universe. Seth's defeat by Horus marked a significant turning point in Egyptian mythology. Horus became the king of Egypt, and Seth, the god of chaos, was cast into the desert. But even then, Seth's role wasn't over. The Egyptians knew that chaos was never truly vanquished. It was simply kept at bay. This delicate balance between Seth's chaotic nature and Horus' order was essential to the Egyptians' understanding of the universe. Seth's story is a reminder that even chaos has its place in the grand scheme of things. While he might be feared for his destructive tendencies, he also had moments of heroism and protection. In the end, Seth symbolizes the eternal struggle between chaos and order, forces that are not just opposites, but parts of a whole. So, next time you think about chaos, remember Seth and how even the most disruptive forces can have a purpose in maintaining balance. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of Seth, the Egyptian god of chaos and disorder. Did you know that not all gods in Greek mythology were loved by the people? In fact, some gods were feared and even hated. Ares, the god of war, was one such figure. His name alone sparked terror on the battlefield. But was he really just a bloodthirsty warrior? Or is there more to his story? Join me as we unravel the tale of Ares, the mighty and controversial Greek god of war. Ares, the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Hera, the queen, was a powerful figure in ancient Greek mythology. Unlike other gods who were celebrated for their wisdom or beauty, Ares embodied raw, brutal violence and chaos. He wasn't the strategic mind behind wars. That honor went to his half-sister Athena. Instead, Ares represented the sheer fury of battle, the bloodshed, the screams, and the relentless fighting. He stood for the violent, chaotic nature of war, unpredictable and dangerous. While other gods, like Athena, focused on the tactics and justifications for conflict, Ares gloried in the violence itself. His mere presence was said to ignite bloodlust, inspiring warriors to fight with reckless abandon. But, unlike Athena, Ares was not a god the Greeks admired. His role in mythology was controversial, and he wasn't held in the same regard as other Olympians. In Homer's Iliad, we get a glimpse of Ares' violent nature during the Trojan War. He fought on the side of the Trojans, causing chaos and destruction wherever he went. But despite his strength and brutality, Ares was often depicted as a cowardly figure who could be defeated and humiliated. In one famous episode, the goddess Athena strikes him down during battle, showing that war, driven purely by rage, is ultimately self-destructive. Ares also had a volatile relationship with the other gods. Even his own father, Zeus, was not fond of him, calling him the most hated of all his children. Unlike the heroes of Greek mythology, who often fought for noble causes, Ares represented war at its worst, bloodthirsty, cruel, and without reason. Ares wasn't alone on the battlefield. He was often accompanied by his sons Deimos, terror, and Phobos, fear, who personified the emotions that every soldier would face in the heat of battle. With these two by his side, Ares spread panic and dread among his enemies, ensuring that every fight was filled with chaos. Also by his side was Eris, the goddess of strife, whose name means discord. She thrived in the havoc of war, ensuring that conflict followed wherever Ares went. This sinister group made Ares not just a god of physical battle, but a master of the psychological torment that comes with war. Fear, terror, and strife were his weapons as much as any sword or spear. Despite his brutal nature, Ares had a passionate relationship with Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Their affair became one of the most famous in Greek mythology. Even though Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsmanship, she couldn't resist the allure of Ares. Their relationship symbolized the paradox of war and love, two primal forces that are often inseparable. However, their affair was far from romantic. In one story, Hephaestus, jealous of their relationship, crafted an unbreakable net and caught Ares and Aphrodite in the act. He invited all the gods to witness their humiliation. The gods laughed at the spectacle, but this didn't end Ares and Aphrodite's relationship. Their love affair continued, symbolizing the duality of love and war, opposing forces that often intertwine in mythology. One of the most fascinating aspects of Ares' character is his rivalry with his half-sister, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare. While Ares represented the chaotic and bloody aspects of battle, Athena symbolized strategic warfare, discipline, and the pursuit of victory for just causes. She was everything Ares was not: calculated, focused, and revered. In the Iliad, their conflict comes to a head when Athena supports the Greeks and Ares backs the Trojans. In a dramatic confrontation, Athena defeats Ares, once again demonstrating that brute force alone cannot win wars. This rivalry represents two sides of the same coin. War can be either destructive or strategic, chaotic or purposeful. While Ares may not have been beloved by the Greeks, he still had his followers. Soldiers and warriors who craved power and victory offered sacrifices to Ares before battle. His most notable cult site was in the city of Sparta, a society known for its militaristic values and admiration of war. For the Spartans, Ares represented everything they stood for: strength, discipline, and unrelenting power on the battlefield. Yet, even among his worshippers, Ares was a figure more feared than loved. His temples were few compared to other gods, and offerings were made as much to appease him as to win his favor. The ancient Greeks understood the destructive nature of war and prayed that Ares' wrath would be directed at their enemies, not at them. Ares' legacy as the god of war remains a powerful reminder of the dual nature of conflict. He represents the darker, more primal side of war, the part that revels in chaos, destruction, and fear. While Athena may have been the celebrated goddess of war, Ares' role in mythology serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked violence and aggression. Even today, Ares continues to inspire stories, films, and discussions about the nature of conflict. His presence in popular culture, from video games to movies, reminds us that the god of war still holds sway over our imaginations. So, what do you think of Ares? Was he simply a god of destruction, or do you think there's more to his character? Let me know in the comments below. Did you know that the famous Trojan horse, one of the most iconic symbols of the Trojan War, might never have existed? Despite the legend, there's virtually no archaeological evidence of this colossal wooden structure. Today, we're diving deep into the untold truths of Troy, questioning everything we thought we knew about this legendary city and its epic war. Troy is one of the most enduring legends in human history, made famous by Homer's Iliad and countless retellings in literature and film. But behind the captivating myth of heroic battles, beautiful Helen, and a wooden horse lies a far more complex story. In this video, we'll expose the real Troy, unraveling the myth, examining the evidence, and revealing truths that challenge everything we've believed about this legendary tale. So, what is the real story of Troy? Did this epic city ever truly exist? And did a war like the one described in the Iliad actually take place? These questions have puzzled historians and archaeologists for centuries. Some scholars claim that Troy is merely a fictional creation, a symbol of the ancient world's fascination with grand battles and tragic love stories. Others insist that the ruins of the city at Hisarlik in modern-day Turkey prove that Troy was a real place, devastated by conflict. But the challenge lies in separating the myth from the reality, as the lines between legend and historical fact blur with every new discovery. Why have historians disagreed so much about Troy, and what are the stakes in uncovering the truth? Let's begin by exploring the legendary account that most of us are familiar with, the Iliad, attributed to Homer. This epic poem, written hundreds of years after the supposed events of the Trojan War, tells the story of a brutal conflict between the Greeks and Trojans, sparked by the abduction of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. The Greek army, led by kings like Agamemnon and the hero Achilles, besieges the city of Troy for 10 long years. But how much of this is true, and how much is pure fiction? For centuries, Troy's existence was believed to be a mere fable, until a man named Heinrich Schliemann embarked on one of the most controversial archaeological digs in history. In the late 19th century, Schliemann discovered ruins at Hisarlik that he claimed were the lost city of Troy. Among his findings were treasures that he boldly declared to be the jewels of Helen herself. But Schliemann's methods were reckless. He dug through layers of history, sometimes destroying valuable evidence, all in the name of proving the story of Troy was real. Despite his questionable tactics, Schliemann's discovery reignited the debate about Troy's existence. Was Hisarlik the real Troy? Archaeologists began examining the layers of ruins at the site, which showed signs of multiple cities built on top of one another, some of which had been destroyed by war. These findings aligned with the idea that Troy had been attacked and rebuilt over the centuries. But was one of these cities the Troy of the Iliad? And did a war like the Trojan War actually occur? Another key piece of the puzzle is the rediscovery of Walusa, a city mentioned in Hittite texts that many scholars believe could be the historical Troy. These ancient records describe conflicts between the Hittites and a city that fits Troy's description, located near the Dardanelles, where Hisarlik is situated. This discovery suggests that the Trojan War, or something like it, may have been based on real historical conflicts. However, the war might not have been fought over Helen's beauty, but over control of trade routes, as Troy's location was strategically important for commerce between the Aegean and the Black Sea. And then, there's the famous Trojan horse, a symbol of cunning and deceit, which, according to legend, allowed the Greeks to sneak into Troy and destroy the city from within. However, there's no physical evidence of this massive wooden horse. Many historians now believe that the Trojan horse may have been a poetic metaphor for something else, perhaps a siege engine or an earthquake that breached the city walls. This theory casts doubt on one of the most iconic parts of the story, forcing us to reconsider what really happened. The Iliad itself, while filled with captivating tales of gods and heroes, is a mix of historical fact, myth, and artistic exaggeration. The ancient Greeks loved to weave their history with mythological elements, creating stories that reflected their culture and values. But where does the legend end and the history begin? Archaeological findings suggest that while there was a city of Troy, and it likely fell in conflict, the details of the war, as told by Homer, are heavily mythologized. The most compelling piece of evidence that challenges the traditional narrative of Troy is the archaeological discovery of Walusa and its connection to the Hittite Empire. This discovery implies that the Trojan War may not have been fought over love or revenge, as depicted in the Iliad, but rather over control of critical trade routes and regional power. The war may have been more political and economic than personal, suggesting that Troy was not just a legendary battleground, but a real city caught in the geopolitical struggles of the ancient world. This changes everything we thought we knew about the story of Troy. The grand romantic tales of Helen and Paris, Achilles' wrath, and the gods meddling in human affairs might all be embellishments added over centuries. In reality, Troy could have been a city of strategic importance, with its downfall rooted in more practical concerns, far removed from the idealized myths passed down through generations. So, what does this all mean? The story of Troy is far more complex and nuanced than the simple narrative told by Homer. Troy was likely a real city. Its legendary war may have been far different from what we've imagined. The truth behind Troy challenges the traditional myth, reminding us that history is often written and rewritten by those who tell the stories. Join me as I dive deep into the real story of Achilles and uncover surprising facts you never knew. In this video, you'll discover the untold story of Achilles, beyond the myths and legends that have shaped his identity for centuries. Achilles is often portrayed as the ultimate warrior, the demigod with superhuman strength. But what if there's more to his character and motivations than what meets the eye? His story is one of passion, rage, and tragedy, captivating us for millennia while being shrouded in mystery and exaggeration. Achilles, the mighty hero of the Trojan War, was far more than just a warrior. To truly understand him, we need to look beyond the surface. We must explore the man behind the armor, the emotions, desires, and flaws that made him both a celebrated hero and a tragic figure. Behind the shield and spear lies a complex individual shaped by his relationships, his upbringing, and his destiny. Let's start with the idea of honor. For Achilles, honor is everything. It defines his sense of self and purpose, and his pride is tightly bound to his identity as a warrior. He's not just fighting for Greece. He's fighting for his own name, for glory that will outlast his brief life. But as we dig deeper, we find that Achilles' sense of honor is also his greatest vulnerability. His pride fuels his rage, often leading him to act impulsively. This combination of courage and impulsiveness is a hallmark of his character, making him both awe-inspiring and, at times, frightening. His rage, particularly against Agamemnon, is one of the most famous aspects of his story. Agamemnon, the Greek commander, insults Achilles by taking away his war prize, the woman Briseis. This act sparks Achilles' infamous wrath, leading to his withdrawal from battle. But there's more to this feud than just a dispute over Briseis. This event reveals Achilles' deep-seated insecurities. Despite being the greatest warrior of his time, Achilles feels disrespected and powerless when Agamemnon exerts his authority. His anger isn't just about a woman. It's about his very identity as a warrior and a leader being called into question. Let's not forget Achilles' prophetic fate. It's said that he was given a choice. He could live a long life without glory or a short life with eternal fame. Achilles chose the latter. This decision to pursue glory at the cost of his life speaks to a central tension in his character, the conflict between mortality and immortality. He knows that his time is limited, yet he seeks to make the most of it by becoming a legend. This duality is fascinating, as it drives many of his actions throughout the war. A key relationship that shaped Achilles is the one with his mother, Thetis. Thetis, a sea nymph, is aware of her son's fate and tries to shield him from it. She even dips him in the river Styx to make him invulnerable, though she misses his heel, which eventually becomes his famous weak spot. Thetis represents the emotional core of Achilles' story. She loves him, fears for him, and tries to protect him from his own fate, but ultimately, she knows she can't change what's destined. This relationship sheds light on Achilles' vulnerability. Beneath the warrior, he's also a son who carries the weight of his mother's fears and hopes. One of the most overlooked yet significant elements in Achilles' life is his deep bond with Patroclus. Patroclus isn't just a companion. He is Achilles' closest confidant, and some interpretations even suggest a romantic bond between them. Their relationship humanizes Achilles in a way that few other relationships do. Patroclus represents Achilles' connection to a world beyond battle, a world of friendship, love, and loyalty. When Patroclus dies at the hands of Hector, Achilles' grief is overwhelming. It's this loss that brings Achilles back into the war, consumed by rage and a desire for revenge. Achilles' return to battle is one of the most dramatic moments in Homer's Iliad. His fury this time is different. It's personal, driven by loss rather than pride. The image of Achilles dragging Hector's body around the walls of Troy after killing him in battle is both horrifying and tragic. In this moment, we see the full depth of Achilles' rage, but also his sorrow. He's a man who has lost his best friend, and in his grief, he lashes out in the only way he knows, through violence. But what of Achilles' final moments? He knows that after he kills Hector, his own death is near. The prophecy is clear. Achilles is destined to die shortly after Hector. And yet, Achilles embraces this fate. In a way, his acceptance of death shows a level of bravery that transcends the battlefield. He's willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to avenge Patroclus and achieve eternal glory. But it's not just about glory anymore. Achilles has come to terms with his own humanity, his grief, and his mortality. Achilles' death, shot in the heel by Paris, is one of the most iconic moments in Greek mythology. It's a reminder that even the greatest heroes have their weaknesses, that no one is invincible. Achilles' death marks the end of an era in the Trojan War, but it also leaves us with a poignant message. Even the mightiest of warriors are bound by fate and mortality. Let's take a step back and look at what Achilles' story truly represents. On the surface, it's a tale of war and heroism, but beneath that, it's a story about the human condition. Achilles embodies the struggles we all face, between pride and vulnerability, life and death, glory and loss. His story reminds us that even the greatest among us are flawed, that behind every legend is a real person with emotions, fears, and desires. In the end, Achilles isn't just a demigod or a warrior. He's a symbol of the complexities of human nature. His story has endured for thousands of years because it speaks to something universal: our desire for meaning, our fear of death, and our search for glory. Achilles' tale is not just about his battles. It's about his internal war, the struggle to find purpose in a life destined to be cut short. If you found this deep dive into Achilles' story fascinating, make sure to comment your thoughts below. Welcome to today's journey into the legend of Achilles, one of the greatest figures in Greek mythology. Was his fate truly sealed by prophecy? How did he meet his tragic end? And what role did Patroclus play in his life? Join me as we uncover the real story behind Achilles, his glory, his weakness, and the legacy that endures. Achilles, the Greek hero of the Trojan War, has fascinated people for thousands of years. His story is not just about battles and gods. It's a rich tale filled with prophecy, friendship, choices, and ultimately a tragic death. Today, we'll tackle the most important questions about his life and legacy, And by the end, you'll have a deeper understanding of who Achilles really was. Achilles was the son of Peleus, a mortal king, and Thetis, a sea nymph. This made Achilles a demigod, half mortal, half divine. His story begins even before his birth when Thetis was told by the gods that her son was destined for either a long, quiet life or a short, glorious one. This prophecy shaped Achilles' decisions throughout his life. Thetis, knowing Achilles was vulnerable, dipped him into the river Styx, which granted him near invincibility. However, she held him by the heel, leaving that part of his body unprotected. This would later become his fatal weakness. Achilles grew to be the mightiest warrior in the Greek army during the Trojan War, where he earned eternal fame. His actions, victories, and choices would eventually lead to both his glory and his doom. Achilles' death is one of the most iconic moments in Greek mythology. According to legend, Paris, the Trojan prince, fatally wounded Achilles with an arrow. But it wasn't just any shot. It was guided by the god Apollo, who directed the arrow straight into Achilles' only vulnerable spot, his heel. This incident gave rise to the term Achilles' heel, which now symbolizes a person's greatest weakness. Patroclus was more than just a companion to Achilles. He was his closest friend, and some versions of the myth even suggest they were lovers. Patroclus played a central role in Achilles' life, both emotionally and militarily. When Achilles withdrew from the Trojan War due to a dispute with Agamemnon, it was Patroclus who wore his armor and fought in his place. However, Patroclus was killed by Hector, the Trojan prince, which triggered Achilles' deepest grief and rage. It was Patroclus' death that drove Achilles to re-enter the war and ultimately seek revenge against Hector. Achilles' refusal to fight in the Trojan War stemmed from a bitter dispute with Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces. After Agamemnon seized Briseis, a woman Achilles had claimed as his war prize, Achilles felt deeply dishonored. His pride and anger led him to withdraw from battle, leaving the Greeks vulnerable. This decision had far-reaching consequences, and it wasn't until the death of Patroclus that Achilles returned to the battlefield. The prophecy surrounding Achilles is central to understanding his story. According to the Oracle of Apollo, Achilles had two possible fates. He could either live a long and peaceful life without fame, or he could die young and achieve eternal glory. Achilles, driven by a desire for greatness, chose the latter. Another prophecy foretold that Achilles would die soon after the death of Hector, a Trojan prince. Despite knowing his fate, Achilles pursued revenge, fully aware that his time was limited. Achilles remains one of the most iconic figures in Greek mythology. He is remembered as the greatest warrior of the Trojan War, a symbol of both strength and vulnerability. His name is synonymous with the concept of tragic heroism, a man who achieved incredible glory but could not escape his inevitable downfall. His story has transcended time, becoming a lasting symbol of heroism and the idea that even the greatest among us have weaknesses. Without a doubt, Achilles is remembered as the greatest warrior of the Trojan War. His unmatched combat skills, strength, and leadership made him a hero among the Greeks. Even the Trojans feared him, and his involvement in the war turned the tide for the Greeks. However, his greatest strength was also his greatest flaw, his inability to avoid anger, pride, and the pursuit of glory. Achilles wasn't killed by a Greek hero, but by a Trojan prince. Paris, the brother of Hector, shot the fateful arrow that struck Achilles in the heel. But it wasn't just Paris' skill that led to Achilles' downfall. The god Apollo guided the arrow to hit Achilles' only vulnerable spot. This moment symbolized the power of the gods and fate, as no mortal could kill Achilles by conventional means. Though Achilles is often depicted as a hero, he was not a full god. He was a demigod, the son of the mortal king Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis. His divine heritage granted him extraordinary abilities, but he remained mortal and was subject to both human emotions and mortality. No, Zeus was not Achilles' father. However, Achilles was a demigod because his mother, Thetis, was a sea nymph. Zeus had originally been interested in Thetis, but after a prophecy foretold that her son would be greater than his father, Zeus allowed her to marry Peleus, a mortal king. Achilles is a figure of myth and legend, and there is no historical evidence to suggest he was a real person. However, some historians believe the character of Achilles might have been inspired by actual warriors or kings of the Mycenaean era, which coincides with the supposed time of the Trojan War. In the myths, Achilles was described as having near-superhuman strength and agility. His combat prowess was unmatched, and he could defeat even the mightiest of opponents in battle. His strength was magnified by his divine ancestry, which made him one of the most feared warriors of his time. Achilles was relatively young when he died, with estimates putting him in his late 20s or early 30s. In Greek mythology, many heroes lived short but glorious lives, and Achilles was no exception. He chose a short life filled with honor and glory over a long, uneventful one. This is a debated topic in Greek mythology. While Achilles had a deep bond with Patroclus, some traditions suggest they were lovers, while others see them as close friends. Additionally, Achilles had a romantic relationship with Briseis, a Trojan woman who was taken as his war prize. Achilles' greatest weakness, both literally and figuratively, was his heel. Thetis dipped Achilles into the river Styx to make him invincible, but she held him by the heel, leaving that part vulnerable. In a broader sense, Achilles' pride and temper were also his emotional weaknesses, often driving him to make rash decisions. Achilles' story is one of glory, love, loss, and fate. He was a hero who achieved greatness, yet he could not escape the prophecy that foretold his death. His life and legacy continue to captivate us today, reminding us that even the mightiest heroes have their weaknesses.
Olympias, a name that echoes through history, filled with intrigue, power, and ruthlessness. She was a queen, a mother, and one of the most feared women of the ancient world. But what made her so dangerous, and why does her legacy continue to fascinate us today? Join me as we dive into the life of Olympias and uncover the truth behind the woman who shaped the destiny of Alexander the Great and changed the course of history forever. Born in the ancient kingdom of Epirus, Olympias was no ordinary woman. From an early age, it was clear that she was destined for greatness. She was not content with the role society expected her to play, a submissive queen at the mercy of the men around her. No, Olympias had bigger plans. She wanted power, and she knew exactly how to get it. Her ambition would propel her to become one of the most powerful figures in the ancient world, but it would also leave a trail of destruction in its wake. Today we'll explore her rise to power, her ruthless tactics, and the lengths she was willing to go to secure her legacy. Was she a devoted mother fighting for her son's future, or a cold-hearted manipulator willing to destroy anyone in her path? Olympias was born around 375 BC into the royal family of Epirus. As a child, she likely observed the world of politics and power from the sidelines, learning early on how fragile alliances could be. Her destiny changed when she was married off to King Philip II of Macedon, one of the most powerful rulers of the time. This marriage, however, was more than just a political alliance. It was Olympias' first step toward the throne. As the wife of Philip, Olympias found herself thrust into the dangerous and complex world of Macedonian politics. She quickly adapted, using her beauty, intelligence, and charm to influence those around her. But Olympias was not content to merely be a queen at Philip's side. She had her sights set on something greater, securing the future for her son Alexander. Olympias was not just a passive player in Macedon. She was a master manipulator, known for her ability to charm and influence. It's said that she was deeply involved in religious practices, even rumored to have practiced mystical rites. Her religious influence only heightened her power at court, as many believe she had a divine connection. But Olympia's true ambition lay in ensuring that her son Alexander would succeed Philip and take the throne. She knew that the road to power in a male-dominated world was fraught with danger, and she was prepared to take drastic steps to protect Alexander's future. When other heirs and rivals threatened Alexander's claim, Olympias took matters into her own hands. She orchestrated alliances, leveraged her influence, and even turned to darker means, using poison and betrayal to eliminate those who stood in her way. The court became a dangerous place, and Olympias' enemies soon learned that crossing her was a fatal mistake. The turning point in Olympias' life came with the assassination of Philip II in 336 BC. Philip's death was shrouded in mystery and intrigue. Some say that Olympias had a hand in his murder, seeking to eliminate her husband to ensure her son's rise to power. While there is no definitive proof of her involvement, her swift actions after his death suggest that she was more than prepared for this moment. After Philip's assassination, Olympias acted quickly to secure Alexander's position as the new king of Macedon. She orchestrated the removal of any threats, including Philip's other wives and children. It is said that she had one of Philip's wives and her infant child murdered to eliminate any potential rivals. Olympias' ruthlessness knew no bounds when it came to protecting her son's inheritance. As Alexander ascended to the throne, Olympias' role in his reign became undeniable. She had ensured his place as king, but her thirst for power did not end there. With Alexander now king, Olympias became the most powerful woman in Macedon. Her influence over her son was significant, and she continued to manipulate court politics to her advantage. Some historians believe that Olympias encouraged Alexander's belief in his divine origins, convincing him that he was the son of Zeus, not just a mere mortal. Whether true or not, it's clear that Olympias' guidance shaped Alexander's ambitions and worldview. While Alexander was off conquering the known world, Olympias remained in Macedon, wielding power in his absence. Her reign as queen mother was marked by intrigue, betrayal, and a series of brutal decisions to maintain her grip on the throne. She even involved herself in military matters, once leading an army to secure her political position. But Olympias' story did not end with Alexander's conquests. In the years following his death, she faced new challenges and enemies that would test her once again. After Alexander's untimely death in 323 BC, the empire he built quickly began to fracture. Olympias, determined to maintain her family's control over Macedon, entered a brutal struggle for power. She allied herself with Alexander's son and widow, seeking to eliminate any rivals who threatened her grandson's claim to the throne. In the end, however, Olympias' ruthlessness caught up with her. She was eventually captured by her enemies and executed in 316 BC. Her death marked the end of an era, but her legacy as one of the most formidable and ruthless women in history was cemented. Olympias remains one of the most enigmatic and powerful figures of the ancient world. She was a woman who defied the expectations of her time, using every tool at her disposal, charm, manipulation, and even murder, to secure her son's future. Her actions may have been ruthless, but they were also driven by a fierce love for her family. So what do you think? Was Olympias a hero protecting her son's legacy, or was she a villain consumed by power? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Join me as I dive into the scandalous love life of Zeus and see if we can uncover all his wild affairs. Zeus, the king of gods in Greek mythology, is often depicted as a powerful, authoritative figure, ruling over Mount Olympus with an iron fist. But behind the scenes, his love life is a tangled web of complicated relationships, illicit affairs, and even divine scandals. For Zeus, love and lust were often inseparable from power, and his pursuit of both would lead to some of the most legendary stories in Greek mythology. When it comes to Zeus's love life, it's hard to separate fact from fiction. The ancient Greeks were known for their vivid storytelling, and myths about Zeus's romantic conquests have been passed down for centuries. Some say his affairs were acts of passion. Others claim they were strategic maneuvers. But one thing is certain. Zeus's affairs have left a lasting impact on Greek mythology, shaping the very fabric of the myths and legends we know today. Zeus's reputation as a ladies' man has led to many controversies among gods and mortals alike. His numerous affairs caused tension within the Olympian community, often pitting goddesses and nymphs against each other in a desperate battle for his attention. But the chaos wasn't confined to Olympus alone. His relationships with mortal women often brought devastating consequences, not only for the women themselves but for entire kingdoms. As we delve deeper into Zeus's love life, we'll explore the complex web of relationships that have defined his reign as king of the gods. From the jealous wrath of Hera, who sought revenge against her unfaithful husband and his many lovers, to the fleeting romances with mortal women that gave birth to heroic figures, Zeus's love life is a rich tapestry of drama, passion, and deceit. Let's begin with Europa, one of Zeus's most famous conquests. Europa was a beautiful Phoenician princess, and Zeus, taken by her beauty, transformed himself into a majestic white bull. In this form, he lured Europa onto his back and whisked her away to the island of Crete. From their union, Europa bore 3 sons, including Minos, who would later become the king of Crete and a judge of countless times. But what's often overlooked is the impact this affair had on his already strained marriage to Hera. Zeus's wife, Hera, was the goddess of marriage, and she did not take kindly to her husband's infidelities. Her jealousy is legendary, and her vengeance often fell not on Zeus, but on the one he seduced, and sometimes their children. For example, Hera's wrath would eventually come to haunt Europa's descendants. King Minos, despite his divine heritage, would face the curse of a monstrous offspring, the Minotaur, a reminder of the divine and mortal entanglements that Zeus so often instigated. Next, we move to Zeus's affair with Leda, the wife of King Tyndareus of Sparta. This particular romance resulted in one of the most significant events in Greek mythology. Disguised as a swan, Zeus seduced Leda, and from their union, Helen was born. Helen's beauty was said to be unparalleled, so much so that her abduction would spark the infamous Trojan War, a conflict that lasted a decade and reshaped the Greek world. Leda's story is a testament to Zeus's reckless disregard for mortal lives and kingdoms, as his desires frequently disrupted the natural order. Another one of Zeus's most scandalous affairs is his relationship with his niece, Leto. This forbidden romance produced 2 of the most important gods in the Greek pantheon, Apollo and Artemis. However, Leto's pregnancy wasn't easy. Hera, enraged by her husband's betrayal, cursed Leto, forbidding any land to give her shelter during childbirth. After wandering in exile, Leto eventually found refuge on the floating island of Delos, where she gave birth to her divine children. The story of Leto highlights the lengths to which Hera would go to